Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of The X Button, Season 3, Episode 12. I'm your host, Alejandro. With me is the man that finally upgraded his hair.
Paul, hey everybody, how's it going?
You finally, after nearly 100 episodes, Paul, you're bringing back the original look from,
You
episode
see,
1 from back in 2021.
see, I like to view it as the comic book process, where you have to bring back the OG look every once in a while to let everyone go, oh, there's the thing. So yeah, that's entirely motivating my haircut, 100%, nothing professional or
Yeah.
work related at all.
Yeah, definitely not something that had you moved to the East Coast. So, but I
Nothing,
tell you, it's
nah.
you look transformed. You legit look transformed to if anyone goes back and look the episode where you were recording from your bed to now, the upgrade is significant.
I
So,
I kind of want to go back after we're done here and actually look back because I haven't even looked at our episodes the last few weeks, obviously
mhm.
because I'm here and not fully available. So I can only imagine how tired and exhausted and disheveled I look the entire time.
Oh yeah, but hey, it's at any point we can always clean our act together, and especially because you got some big shoes to fill with what you've been given without giving any details. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I was excited to have you here. I'm really loving this new recording times. I feel like it's perfectly lining up. Obviously, we recorded a little later last week to kind of test something, but it feels like the Thursdays at this time should be the time now for us to be able to post our episodes when they should be going up, because this is the X Bottom podcast or gaming podcast that posts every Fridays from 2 p.m. onwards, God willing. Available on the YouTube channel Escape Gaming, as well as most audio services around the world. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the like. You can find links in the RSS feed at anchor.fm/escape-gaming. If you enjoy our show, give us a like and subscribe. So, Paul, this is Survival Horror Week for us because
Yes, it is.
Resident Evil 4 Remake came out last Friday. I had just started playing it. You played the demo before that. Now you were able to play a little bit more. But before we dive into that, I just have to say that I finished Dead Space Remake. I had mentioned a week or two ago that yeah, another game from this year that I'm only missing Hogwarts, and then basically beat all the games, both of us, that have come out this year.
True.
So
Any of the ones that we consider to be decent,
yeah,
because there are plenty that we've given up
yeah,
on.
Atomic Heart, I've long since
Yeah,
dropped.
and
Hogwarts, I
of
like a lot. That
course,
I just can't wait to just make it my own focus, because we're about to enter
yeah,
a little bit of a dry spell. But Dead Space Remake is a really excellent game that to me suffers the same thing as the original, that it becomes so annoying in its final push.
mm,
Pulling that, the entire section of when you find the marker and have to push that marker around, is when I feel that game starts losing steam for me a little. Thankfully, I had saved all the side missions before the point of no return. So I was I'm gonna go back and do all of that before I have to keep pushing the stupid marker before that. And that's the one area that I really like, how they have basically taken the collectible farming of the original, and now made it this interesting Metroidvania style side quest system that can take you back and forth through the entire ship, and it's all one shot, and it's giving you interesting lore for Nicole, the hunter, the big stupid annoying monster that is indestructible, that eventually you kill by burning him in the ship. That I was oh yeah, finally I got you, sucker. And things about the Church of Unitology, that I don't remember that being mentioned a lot in the original one, but was a big plot point on the sequel. So they've been more obvious that yeah, there was another game that happened here, and let's plant the seeds for them to sprout for an eventual Dead Space 2 remake. Even though if it never gets remade, some of the kernels that are mentioned here are more direct connections for anyone that wants to play Dead Space 2 over on backwards compatibility. It's there if anyone doesn't want to wait for a complete rework, but I feel this is still one of the more impressive visual remakes that have come out this generation. Just the quality in production of that is kind of what I was saying. With the thing that impresses me the most about Hogwarts Legacy, outside its more middling game, is the quality of his production. I feel Dead Space Remake is something that's even more intense, example of the idea of a game that's just current gen only, just in this consoles, and it looks so damn good. Even if the color palette eventually loses its luster because it's just the same one environment with just a few color variations here and there, but in the little that it does, is like it does it so well, like visually, that it's like it's still something that to me blows my mind that that came from EA Motive. These were not even the guys that made Dead Space the original Dead Space. That those developers are long gone. So the fact that these guys were able to like capture what other developers did, and now makes me excited that they are now the stewards for if Dead Space keeps going. Makes me happy, especially because yesterday we got confirmation that Dead Space Remake is the third best-selling game in the United States, just behind Hogwarts Legacy and Modern Warfare 2. That's like, if you're third, just behind those two, which are like the obvious big ones, that's a pretty big deal. Pretty big deal. And I'm excited because if it didn't sell, we're not gonna get more. This was the test.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that now we get that opportunity to see Dead Space 2 and even potentially a revisited Dead Space 3, which I think had so much potential.
Yeah.
I hope they give it like a true try, you know. And this isn't Dead Space 3 though. This is talking about Dead Space Remake. So
yeah, but that's the thing. Like Dead Space 3,
to think.
Yeah, Dead Space 3 was butchered by EA. That was one of the few games they were like, no, we want to monetize games more. Let's like screw the design because we want you to sell microtransactions to this crafting system that is now part of like the gameplay loop.
And, like buy ammo with real money or something like that. Yeah. So that was just a whole thing. But as far as the actual Dead Space remake, I still think it's unsurpassed in its atmosphere, its look. It's just raw, chunky, nasty feeling, and I love it so much. There's something about
so unique.
that.
It's so unique still to this day. Like it stands out so well.
I just watched Alien 1 the first time like a year or so ago, and when everybody was talking about that whole what was it, the H.R. Geiger, or was it the
H.R. Geiger, the aesthetic?
So like that aesthetic of not only like the weird organic alien stuff, but like that chunky, really concrete feeling of the technology in that world that was just such a killer in the 80s that I would look at it and I went, oh, I get it now. And Dead Space is probably the closest I've ever seen to like just really nailing that feel of everything is interactable, it functions, it works, and it makes sense not only from like character perspective because this is an engineer, but the entire point of the game is that the ship is broken and you're going through service tunnels and engineer access places to find it. So it makes sense that all of these giant propellers all serve a true function and feel like it serves this ship that you're in, not just, hey, what is this propeller doing? Don't know. Looking at you, Callisto Protocol.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, the more we get removed from Callisto Protocol, even having enjoyed it at the time, it's like you really notice how, like, especially when you see what Dead Space originally was, how this remake like smoothed out some of the edges, added stuff, and
really improved
and really improved, like for it to be like the definitive way to play the original one. It's like now you can look back at Callisto, it's like, man, that's still so sad. It's like, why is like the next game from the guy that created it wasn't as good? But them's the breaks. But yeah, it's like,
I guess that's one of the things with the creative types when you revisit something that was like the source of your first big success. It's such a toss-up. It's a flip of the coin, really, because it's either you still have that same passion for exactly what made you big, or you've moved on as a person. And like that's the thing, is you don't want to revisit the point of your greatest success because you're usually never going to do as good as you did that first time. You're better off just going in a completely different direction.
And because we love this franchise so much, Paul, that's exactly what happened to George Lucas. So it's like literally, it's like that. We are prequel stands, but we also know those movies have their problems. They're not like Lucas completely like he didn't understand why the entirety of his original trilogy worked when he had more collaborators to like be able to like aid him instead of him being like the one in charge of everything, and with just Jasmine around. So I guess that's just part for the course. Like you revisit like a masterpiece, let's say, like again, it's sometimes very rare moments where lightning can strike twice in a bottle. It's like that. Especially years after.
Done.
Yeah, but
you look at something like Mad Max Fury Road with George Williams and how much that dude just gets it still.
George Miller.
Miller, sorry. I messed that up. Yeah,
Yeah.
George Miller. And just the concept, of course, kind of cross-pollination here outside of video games. But let's say like God of War,
Hmm.
to
Yeah,
go into that
yeah.
side of it.
That's also a rare example of someone coming back to its greatest hits. However, in this case, with the intention of not doing exactly what you did before, like with a complete reinvention. That's why Cory
Yes.
Barlog, who directed God of War 2 and worked in the original one, then left for many years and came back for
Yeah.
the reimagining, was like he came in with like the mission is that we're not doing it the same as we did, and I think that's what helped. When you're
Yeah.
trying to recapture that landing in the bottle, that's where uh,
I think
you
it's
can.
like even if you're the same person, what worked then won't work now. And you
Mm,
have to approach it like media and people in general have moved on from what worked at that point. So if you made a one-to-one recreation of that, it's not going to do well.
yeah,
And you have to do something new. But yeah. So yeah,
yeah,
Dead
yeah.
Space remake just
Yeah, I'm glad
freaking
that.
slaps.
Yeah, it slaps. It's still like at the very top. Like right now, it's like very, very high on my top favorite games of this year. It's so funny. My three favorite things from this year have been remakes. So like all three of them,
I
and
know. What a concept and what a world we live in where we get some actual love and care put into something and
yeah, and
the
and and
remake is what it
and
is.
someone can start making the argument. It's like, isn't that sad that the best things are things that have basically been remade from like years past? And I'm like, yes and no, because we have also seen like the lazy remake. We have also seen like the minimal viable product remake. This is like these are remakes that are going above and beyond just bringing back an original game, and I feel that's worth. I still feel Final Fantasy VII remake is probably at the top of the list of like really going above and beyond, because in their case they're literally completely revamping the story and making it its
Oh
own
yeah,
thing, which is
completely.
like a very daring thing to do even to this day that may alienate people that just wanted the original as it was, just prettier. They just have to go
Mm.
further, and I feel like Dead Space is in that. It hits the tentpole moments of the original game, but the way you get to those tentpole moments have been changed slightly. And the same we can say about Resident Evil 4 Remake, which we can talk about more. What chapter are you on, if
Yes.
you remember?
10 or 11.
Okay. Have you
I
seen
I'm
the
at the
insects?
spot. No,
Okay, then
I
you're
don't think so.
if you haven't seen insects, then you're like at chapter 8. Because
Okay.
you
No.
told.
I'm definitely at chapter 10 because I played as Ashley,
Uh-huh.
and I just got back as Leon.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wait, are you talking about those weird spider-looking things that grab onto
Yeah,
people?
no, they're not spiders. It's
Okay.
actually
No.
insects that fly, like insects with like
No.
green. So we're kind of like in that same spot because I just saw those insects.
Mm.
So you're in chapter 9.
Okay, you're probably just ahead of me
Mm-hmm.
then, because I know I got the request to fight that giant golden knight dude.
I
And
did that
so
yesterday, right before going to bed.
cool. So
Yeah.
I'm probably right behind you, and that means that I probably just started like chapter 10 or something, and that
Mm-hmm.
I just haven't gotten anywhere in it yet. But yeah, so I'm doing like you did, because in the past when I played Resident Evil 4, I did like what you do where you're supposed to
Mm-hmm.
slowly graduate past certain weapons
Mm-hmm.
because there's weaker versions and there's stronger versions, and I'm so glad that we have the ability to upgrade weapons now.
Oh yeah,
I think that was one of my biggest complaints about the old Kingdom Hearts games,
yeah.
oddly enough, and
The
I'm
upgradable
glad that
weapons,
that's
yeah,
kind of a
upgradable
thing.
weapons was in the original one. What they've done better this time is that the resale value of your old
Oh yeah.
stuff is like enough to be able to not feel like you're being gypped for having invested in a weapon when you know a better one is. In fact, the game encourages to be like, don't don't hold off to like old weapons if you know that there's something better. It's like resell everything because we're gonna like resell you that like the full value for you to like put the upgrades on something new. In the original
Yeah.
one, like the resale value was like lower, so there was a more of a tug and pull if you wanted to like stay with a specific weapon or get the upgrades. Which
Mm-mm.
ironically is
Okay.
like the upgrade path of the weapons you're given. From like the original handgun to like the Red 9 to like the Matilda to the original shotgun to then the riot shotgun to the striker.
Mhm.
It happens almost at the exact same moment as it did originally, but everything around it in that game has just been completely redone in a way that there's a few moments where you're like, oh, I remember this part. Here's like the two waters. I have to push Ashley. She's gonna run around the thing, and I have to cover her. That's like the one of the few sections in the castle is like straight lifted from the original. Though much
Yeah,
easier.
I
Though,
remember it
yeah,
actually.
though much easier. But then many other sections like a new troll with armor. You probably see
Yeah.
that you have to like run around the castle. So that's completely
Mm-hmm.
new. Uh,
Yep.
the running when you find Mister the guy with the trench coat that becomes Scorpion.
Yeah,
Like
the chief. I don't remember
yeah,
his
the original
name,
chief with like
but
with the big eye. They added an
Hmm.
extra chase scene right before you
Yep, I
fight him.
remember that.
You fight him
I
in
actually
the.
had some trouble with that because they did lower the health of the enemies, but at first they were like, "Oh, okay, I need to run past them," and Ashley kept getting like clobbered by
Uh,
somebody that I would duck under, and yeah, so I had some trouble with that. But then, yeah, it goes into the almost one-to-one recreation of that boss fight,
mhm.
which I loved that fight, and
With some
how
added mechanics,
crazy
like
it
him like
was.
falling like behind
Yeah,
and throwing you like the fire thing for you to like run left and right, and
yeah.
it's like it's like it knows the things that worked in the original one, and it had sanded off the things that didn't. I feel the pacing's even better in this remake than it did than back then. That if
Yeah, because I don't remember, like, I've only played Resident Evil 4 twice, I'm pretty sure, in my whole life. The first time was like a completely blind playthrough on the PS2.
mm,
Um, and then I think I played the remaster on the
oh,
360.
360, yeah, 2011.
And what a crazy experience that is going into that completely blind because I went backwards from 5,
Ooh,
and then I think I played 4,
yeah.
and then I played 6.
Oh, whoa, so you didn't claim it, so you were like here and
I
then like
kind of, yeah, because I think it was before 6 came out. I finally got like a pre-owned, very discounted 5,
mm-hmm.
and then I knew about 4, picked it up at GameStop for PS2, and then like the day after I found out there was going to be a remaster on 360, and I was like, dang it.
Yeah, that
But
was
yeah,
so high.
I
I was
played through all
that was like
that.
one of my most hyped things that came out in 2011 when they announced like they were releasing an HD version for PS3 and 360 of Resident Evil 4. So I was like, yes, because I had only played it on GameCube without finishing it way back, and I never like got it afterwards. So I was like,
Mm.
yeah, I finally get it, and I get to earn some trophies, even though it didn't have a platinum trophy, which I hated on PS3. It was like,
Still can't believe that was a GameCube exclusive for a while.
yeah, and it's so
Like,
fun. Yeah, can you believe that? It was part of the GameCube 5 that Capcom like committed to Nintendo. Like, we're gonna give you 5 exclusives. 4 of those uh, came out. It was PN3, Beautiful Joe, Killer 7, and Resident Evil 4. And the 5th game never came out. And then all of those games, with the
oh
exception of
shoot.
all of those games, with the exception of Piano 3, made it to PS2 because they didn't sell well, like they wanted. Especially, what was funny is that Shinji Mikami, the director of Resident Evil 4, he had swore up and down. He literally said that this is just gonna be a GameCube exclusive. Like, it's been made specifically to take advantage of the GameCube. Like, this is never gonna come out on any other platform, and if it does, I'm gonna grab a chainsaw and behead myself. He literally said that, and it's so funny
Wow.
looking back because it's been one of the most ported games ever made. Like, it was
Yeah.
ported. It was ported to literally every system like available. It immediately the same year came to PS2 later that year. Then the Wii got an enhanced version where you could do like the motion controls. We got the
Hmm.
PS3 and 360 versions in 2011. Then in 2016 we got the Xbox One and PS4 and then Switch versions. So every system available has had access to this game. So,
Jeez.
and
I yeah, I'm glad that so many people have gotten to experience it because so yeah, to come full circle with that whole thing is I was kind of a newcomer to all that when I finally
mhm,
played Resident Evil 4, and boy was I not expecting what I got. The village experience,
mhm,
everything else, reliving all of that and how just absolutely panicked I felt back in the day
mhm,
getting to up the difficulty and intensity and aggression of all the villagers to kind of
mhm,
coincide with a build up of skill on my part,
mhm.
because now I feel like I'm John Wick, just sniping dudes, hitting somebody in the knee, and then
Yeah, and
suplexing them.
and
It's just
and I
great.
love that the improved mechanics have been like coincided with like a race of difficulty. So it's like, oh, just because you can run and shoot doesn't mean everything's gonna be a cakewalk. No, enemies are way quicker. They're gonna grab you from behind more. They're gonna corner you more. So you have to like still be on your toes. And I think that's so great because it's very easy to just change controls and completely break the original experience. They've enhanced it this way. Like, every time that I face a chainsaw guy in this game, now I'm legit panicking. And the other one, it was so easy to cheese. If you knew how to
Yeah.
constantly like, I could get into a flow of like headshot kick, headshot kick, headshot kick. Now it's way harder to do that here, especially because with the way the reticle works, which back then it was just the laser sight, which made it easier to aim in a way. Which, thankfully, some weapons you can add some laser sight
Thank
laser sight
God.
here.
That is so fun to have the laser sight and extremely necessary after a certain point
Yeah,
because my goodness, ugh,
yeah.
it's not fun.
Oh yes.
But as far as let me think, it's like as far as like deep changes, is there anything in particular that either surprised you or maybe like didn't go the way that you had thought, as opposed to just, universal praise?
Yeah, right now, like the thing that I've noticed is like just like Dead Space remake. This is like heading into the places that you remember, but in a completely different way, and levels 90% completely redesigned that they're not the exact same spot as before. It's
Mm,
like many times I'm like, oh yeah, this is like a new room, huh? And then eventually I would notice something like, oh, this is that part. It's interesting how they like reworked it. So I'm constantly keeping that sense of awe, knowing that I may hit parts that I remember, but Capcom went above and beyond, completely relaying out the levels. Like I remember a part in the original when you were in the castle where you're like in the library that then has some dudes with rocket launcher something suddenly showing up. That hasn't happened here yet. So I'm like, okay, so there's a few parts
mm,
that have been like nixed, some parts
yeah.
that have been like added or switch a lot. To me, like the greatest improvement I have to give to them, Ashley's part. Ashley's section in this
Yes.
game way better, way more fun than back then, because back then you even have to do like a weird like one of those puzzles where you have to like move the squares to like make a shape, which there's a little bit of a hint of that with a hexagon puzzle early on, like in the lake area, that gives you like an early beefy peseta reward. And
Mm.
I'm thankful that for pacing reasons, that has not been like a big a determining moment. Some of the puzzles I've found like they're not that hard, but they're actually really clever with how you actually have to look. Things like, for example, the one in by the tables, where you have to like sit you and Ashley and press the and press the and
Yeah,
ring the thing.
you have to look at the painting,
Uh huh.
and kind of line that up. I think the circle puzzle where you're in the caves and you
Mm-hmm.
have to hit the right ones, it's like paint that's kind
Uh
of
huh.
hidden on stalagmites and stuff. And at first that threw me off, and then I realized when all you had to do was know three of them, and I
Uh
went,
huh.
"Oh, that's so much easier."
Exactly, and not no specific order. You just have to find them. You like use the environment, like as for environmental
Yeah,
storytelling. So yeah, I remember we talked about the whole Ada thing. I have no opinion on Ada right now. Like, I don't think it's better or worse with like what they've been showing with
yeah.
what, because we've
She's
probably
so
seen the same
rarely
thing.
in the game that it probably doesn't feel like a whole lot. I mean, I don't
She's
know,
the
maybe
exact same
there's
amount right now as she was in the original game. So,
honestly a lot of people are like they ruined Ada, they made her feel like she doesn't care about Lee, and I was like, I kind of felt like that already
yeah.
because I didn't really like Ada in the original Resident Evil 4. Just don't crucify me, internet. Um, but as far as like, I know they upped Luis,
hmm
and they really like connected him to the storyline far more.
Yeah. There's
Both
more.
with also giving him more to do.
Yeah, so probably the biggest like improvement story wise is that if there's something that there's many purists from Resident Evil that took some issue with for especially during the time that it was getting all the praise as the game of the years and all that, was that they were sad that Capcom seemingly dropped the whole umbrella of it all back then. Because if you finish Resident Evil 2 or even like Code Veronica, it ends with that now we're gonna take the fight to Umbrella, and then when Resident Evil 4 starts, it's like, oh yeah, Umbrella's gone. So all of that kind of happened like in between because they wanted like a clean break.
Mm, that's
Louis,
true.
like if you read like the things that Hannigan sends you for Luis, like like Luis is uh, a scientist for Umbrella.
Umbrella scientist,
Yeah,
yeah.
so it's like now it's like at least this doesn't feel as disconnected as it was. So it feels like Capcom is like slowly like trying to tie all the games together in a way that eventually got away from them originally. So that's cool, especially they're clearly gonna stay with the whole umbrella of it all. I mean, look at Village, like Village completely giving it an
Yeah.
origin to that
I
to all of that.
I do want to say one more thing before we compare this to Village,
Mhm.
and that I've heard that the island segment is completely redone,
I
from
can't
what
wait
I've heard.
because the island segment
Um,
is the factory section of Village, like in
yeah.
similarity where that's where like the pacing starts. It starts like plummeting a little bit, and
So, yeah, I'm really excited because I don't even really remember the island segment that much. All I'd remember is the chopper
yeah,
portion of it.
yeah, well, a
And
shopper that
that's
helps
like,
you. Yeah, Yeah,
What was his
what
name? Mike, I think.
yeah,
The
yeah.
pilot that helped you.
What made that section very annoying is that because of the way that game worked mechanically, that's when you start getting enemies with weapons and all of that, and
Mm.
it made the whole like tank controls like seem out of place later on. And that wasn't a problem back then. It is more of a problem now that we experience like third-person cover shooters like with a ball mechanic. So I wonder if now that the mechanical improvements of this one will make that entire section that hopefully has been edited for time for like pacing maybe even
Yeah.
better, because there's something that I was telling this in our chat is like I feel this is the first game this year that I'm like I really need to go to bed but I don't want to. I want to keep there's something about there's just something about this game is like it's it has its hooks in me, and
Yeah.
and I'm like that's exactly what I want out of this. I feel like a game that it's not short enough. It's like it's giving us enough meat. It doesn't feel bloated. It just feels right. Everything about this
I
thing feels right.
appreciate how long it is compared to a lot of other things, and comparing it now to Village,
Mm-hmm.
which you could beat in like
A
eight
sitting,
hours.
yeah, in a sitting.
Um, and this game being just easily the double of that, I'd
Mm-hmm.
say, because I think I'm like at 12 hours,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm only at chapter 10, and there's still like what,
16.
19 total?
Yes,
16.
16. Yeah.
Okay. But still, like I fully intend to go back and try to unlock more stuff, and
Yeah, if
it's
it feels
like,
like in the Capcom style, like giving you games that are like infinitely replayable. It's like I
yeah,
understand why Gene Park, who got this game really early for the review process, he beat this game 6 times before it officially came out. Because I
and
can
I see
imagine,
why.
yeah, I can see it's so fun, and especially playing now this directly from Dead Space Remake, the one area where because we're having this back and forth in our chats to kind of give like more info to our listeners that I feel like the one area that Dead Space Remake is better than Resident Evil 4 Remake is probably visual quality, because Resident Evil 4, I tell you, it can be really pretty at times, like very very pretty as like the RE engine can be. However, at times like the frame rate chugs, at times like there's some pixelation. It doesn't look as sharp as you want it to be compared to Dead Space that remains like super sharp throughout. But I'm having more fun with RE4. Like it feels like mechanically, there's just the fact that you have not only just your weaponry, but the context sensitive actions you can make, the parry. It's like things that I tell you because it was rough. Playing RE4 and then be like, I gotta go finish Dead Space Remake before it gets away from me. That was rough because your offensive options in Dead Space Remake are so limited, so freaking limited in comparison.
Yeah.
So
I
for my
think, and of course, that is like the point in a certain way for Dead Space, but it's just one of those cases where it's hard to go back to something that is considered, I don't know, like maybe a slip further towards horror than
mhm.
action.
Yeah,
The several, I would say, measures closer to that, and then like somebody once described Resident Evil 4 as like it's all action with like a tiny hint of horror,
mhm.
really.
Yeah,
And it's just because the nature of your resources are
mhm.
so limited, and like the creepy look of the enemies that
Mhm.
makes it sort of horror, but it's really just a freaking action
Yeah,
game.
it's an action horror. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Action horror with some tense moments throughout, but I feel like the
Yeah.
intensity of the tense moments is higher in RE4 remake than it was originally in back in original Resident Evil 4. But I wonder if that's because I just know Resident Evil 4 so well at this point, and its visuals were like so cartoonish that it was hard to it was hard to take it seriously as a horror game. Uh, but obviously, like if you compare something to like Resident Evil 2 remake from 4 years ago, I would say Resident Evil
Yeah,
2 remake was definitely scarier, and that was the design. Is that you were way more limited.
definitely.
That was not an action game. It's like
I mean, yeah, you always had what, like 7 bullets at any one time, and that
yeah,
was like all you had to work with. So you just run past enemies, and
mm,
I, it's weird because everybody says that this game is harder, but I feel like it's the opposite still.
it's
I
different.
would say that Resident Evil 2 is definitely harder because you just have so many less resources to utilize against your enemies,
Hmm.
whereas Resident Evil 4, you have like 40 pistol bullets, and you just unload on things sometimes. Um, yeah, it just
You
feels
can
like you
get
have such
more.
an
Yeah,
arsenal that you don't have that
yeah.
much trouble.
You can get more overwhelmed with Resident Evil 4 remake. I feel like that's kind of like the difference.
Hmm.
It's like the amount of zombies that you can have in RE2 is like it's very minimal and it's easy to cheese. And knowing that, yeah, you might as well don't waste your bullets, and especially because zombies take what like 10 bullets sometimes in RE2 because
Seriously.
it's not meant to be a game where you're like gunning down everything. It's a game about
Right.
you knowing how to like manage your resources. In RE4, you have to just use everything to survive because it's more like an actual action survival than just survival horror. So whether which one's better than the other, I think that's the beauty of this. These two remake, like the RE2 remake and this one, are such high quality that I can see arguments for both ways of which one is like the best one. To me personally, is RE4 because I just have more.
I think so as well.
I just have way more fun with this, and now more than ever, I can see why Village went the way it was. It was an absolute test bed of them trying to go back to RE4 and doing it modernly. It's like so many of the hallmarks, even like the castle, like Salazar's castle. So many, especially some visual qualities of it, are straight from Dimitrescu, from Castle Dimitrescu.
The vase item things are exactly the same and everything. It is very clearly wearing its inspiration on its sleeve.
Oh yeah.
And it's like power to them, and I'm glad it exists. If there's one thing that I found out that I wish they had done is that they add infinite ammo for all weapons and not just like the classic ones for RE4. Because in 8 you could do literally any gun could be infinite ammo. So I was like a little sad to find that out.
Yeah, are you sure that's not like at all like
I
available?
looked it up. The only 3, it's the Infinite Rocket Launcher, the Chicago Sweeper, which is the typewriter, and the Magnum, I think, one of the Magnums. But yeah, unfortunately, I was like, man, I would love to go through the regular handgun with infinite ammo, really feel it, but that's not.
That was my favorite thing of doing that with RE5, upgrading Wesker's Desert Eagle like to its complete thing, and then just speed run the game and just like one-shotting everything.
Headshot everything. Yes, that's it felt really good. So that's the one thing that I'm like, it's a shame, but whatever.
Yeah, but it's like that's just a tiny nitpick for like what is an incredible game. It's like it's how well like conceptually RE4 works and how well like Capcom just continues killing it with bringing all these games back in the quality that they do. Especially after being the ones that they went from the lazy remasters with the original RE4, 5, and 6 on PS4 to doing this, like the upgrade.
The entire Devil May Cry series being an abomination in their HD remasters. There's a few examples of the opposite, but overall.
But that was like I was talking with our friend Duchess. They were talking about that 2010 to 2015 Capcom was an embarrassment. Like that's when those were happening. That was like the laziest minimal viable product that you can get, and then something like shifted with them when they actually went back to RE7, like a completely new game with a completely new perspective that was really well received. And then Monster Hunter World was like a huge breakout hit for them. Then bringing back Devil May Cry 5, like a mainline entry in Devil May Cry after their pivot with DMC with Ninja Theory's DMC, which I like that game. Obviously, a lot of people don't, but that was a triumphant return for a game that felt just like you remember the core game's feeling, and modernized and being so beloved. And then their entire remake initiative, now Dragon's Dogma is coming back. It's like, as a Japanese developer, Capcom is like at the top of their game, and I wish like Square Enix had this level of consistency. Obviously, they have some of their good stuff. Are you like Final Fantasy VII Remake? Phenomenal game. Can't wait for can't wait for Reunion. I can't wait. I mean, Final Crisis Core Reunion, amazing. Like way better work than we would have been expected from them. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth coming soon. Final Fantasy 16 looking amazing. The things that we're looking for, like they've been like so like carefree. Like here's 30 minutes of the game just being played. Like go enjoy. Like this is what it is. Like they have a level of confidence in the things that work. That it's sad you don't see that level of quality everywhere else. Like Square Enix is like a mess outside of like the core things, and Capcom is more like everything feels like they're giving the time, love, and care. And I feel RE4 Remake, them going back to like one of their most celebrated titles of all time and still making it something that can still be celebrated even now. It's very impressive. To me, it's like RE4 Remake is my front runner, or like my favorite game that I played this year. Obviously, things can change. We got Final Fantasy coming soon. Jedi Survivor, Jedi Survivor is like in a month. Spider-Man 2, we know that's gonna be in the fall. Thanks, Tony Todd, for that leak last week. It's like it's still like feel like we're eating. We're still gonna be eating good, and I haven't been. I'm satisfied with what we've been getting like so far this year. It's like I mentioned, my big miss has been Atomic Heart. For you was that, and not again because Forspoken got away from you. Had you like finished it early on, it's like the entree. Like I mentioned in my review, the beginning thing before you like You don't go back to the outro after you get your meals. You eventually just skip to the meals. It was hard to go back. So
Yeah, it's just one of those things. And like in hindsight, I think it was one of those cases of, well, I'm going to play it because that's all that's in front of me. Um, but then when everything else kind of showed up and I went, well, these are all way better options.
yeah.
And even now, like I theoretically have the ability to play anything that I really want.
Mhm.
I'd rather not go play Forspoken. I just want to play Resident Evil 4 a couple of
Yeah,
times. I
it
want to
would be
go
a
back and
like
play
I
old
tell you,
games.
yeah, I try to go back after testing. I was like, I'm glad I finished and got this because it's like you can definitely tell when it's like next to like the Giants, this doesn't even like scratches it. Even though I had fun with that game, you were so close of hitting so many fun parts. You were like in the rut. You just stopped right when I told you this is the part I just try to keep moving fast out of there because that part sucks and you didn't. You got stuck in the mud
I
and
had
it
already
doesn't.
given up
Yeah.
by that point that you told me, and I was like, "Oh, that makes perfect sense." But I chose that I
Yeah,
wasn't going back.
yeah, you chose Dead Space like as you should. Like Dead Space is an infinitely better
Yeah,
game. So I just like I'm the one that says that Forspoken is a better game than it looks. It looks rough. Like I
true.
can't. Yeah,
I'll give it that.
yeah, I can't deny that. And of course, like you got your magic filled with Hogwarts Legacy. So
Yeah,
yeah, so
immediately after.
exactly, almost immediate. And technically, Hogwarts Legacy is a better game than Hogwarts Legacy. That's also a fact. So
Wait, Forspoken is better than
No, no,
Hogwarts
no.
Legacy?
Hogwarts Legacy is better than
Okay,
Forspoken. That's fact.
there we go.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
no, not the
yes,
other way around. No,
absolutely.
absolutely not
I
the way
was like,
around. No, not even close. But enough of that. Paul. Like we haven't finished it, but I so far highly recommend like the RE4 remake. Like the reviews, the high reviews is getting totally worth it. I tell you. So
yeah. I was worried that it was just going to be that nostalgia bait, but sure enough, they updated themselves so much and really pushed. And I'm just so glad that we're now in this phase where all these companies that own the IPs are going, wait, if we put money in, it's going to print money for us, and
mhm.
therefore hopefully we get a remaster, a
Yeah,
remake, whatever, like true remakes
people people
for some
respond
of
to
the stuff.
quality. People absolutely respond to quality. They've been very clear that minimal viable products in this day and age in the Twitter era where everything can be dunked on, it's not gonna fly. As we're gonna talk with a game that it seems that a version of a game that usually works in the other consoles that are launched, like launch a PC version that's a complete disaster. But we're gonna talk about it a little later because we had a breaking news right before recording, Paul. So let's not beat into the bush. Press X.
For some news.
Story number one. Paul, like, just for it was interesting. Like, obviously, our buddy Sebastian is not here. He went to PAX last week. He told he was sending us pictures of him, all the content creators and like media people that he was meeting, and he was telling us that he talked to PR saying that he was invited to go to E3 to like continue like see some of the work that they were gonna show over there. And earlier this week, we heard that. Ubisoft, the one that we talked 2 weeks ago, that was like, oh yeah, if there's gonna be three, we're gonna be there. They were the only ones after Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft were like, we ain't gonna be there. And then they were the ones that were like, yeah, we're not gonna be there anymore. And I remember saying in our chat, I was like, oh no, that's a really bad sign. Like, we're this late, we don't know anyone else, and the one that was publicly, the big publisher that was publicly saying was gonna be or no longer gonna be there, this doesn't bode well. And obviously everybody was like, well, I don't care about Ubisoft. It's like they haven't made big games anymore. It's like I'm going for everyone else. It was like, who else? It's like we don't know. And then IGN reported, oh yeah, Sega and Tencent, who were planning, are also quitting. So it's like, okay, so no big publishers. So this is a very expensive thing. How is that gonna happen? A few days later, story number one: E3 has been canceled. So once again, the show's status has been in doubt since notable publishers started pulling out. IGN reports that the Entertainment Software Association emailed its members today to let them know the show has been scrapped. The email reportedly said that while E3 remains a beloved event and brand, the 2023 version simply did not garner the sustained interest necessary to execute it in a way that would showcase the size, strength, and impact of our industry. And then a later update for the story because Originally, it was like reportedly canceled. Then E3's organizers have now officially confirmed this. ReedPop and the Entertainment Software Association (ESA) have announced that both the digital and physical events for E3 2023 are canceled. Statement reads: Following the report, there's my dog. Summer Game Fest organizer Jeff Keighley took to Twitter to reiterate that his show is still planned, and that it was originally created as a solution to what he thought was wrong with E3. E3 meant so much to me and so many of you too, Keighley wrote. 4 years ago, 2020, I realized that E3 wasn't evolving as it needed to compete in a global digital world. So we started building what's next. See you at Summer Game Fest on June 8th. So, Sebastian, if you're listening to this, like, I'm sorry to tell you that I told you so bad. We saw the writing on the wall. It's sad. It really is sad that this show just...
It's heartbreaking, and I wanted to believe in it. I was hoping that they had some kind of final ace in the hole after everybody was backing out of this, like something that would mean that they could at least put it on in a smaller capacity and still call it E3, do something more manageable, less overhead, don't use the LA Convention Center. Just, the usual stuff that wouldn't require boatloads of money from people coming to it. And they decided to still try going with the high roller status. And when everybody pulled out, this is what we called from the beginning. As soon as 2020 happened and everybody, all the devs had to do their own showcase, they had that sniff of blood. They went, oh, I can do this myself, spending none of that extra money. I can just put this on. I can be pre-recorded potentially, and that's all I need. Boom. That was the end right there. That was the first tolling of the bell, as it were. This is only just the after effects.
Yeah.
And it makes perfect sense.
There are many constants in our show, Paul, dating all the way back to when we started doing the show in the season 0, the first 13 episodes that we just mulliganed.
Yeah.
The first two within those first 2 episodes, we're talking about Sony leaving E3. Like, they had left already for 2019, they didn't show up, and they said again, yeah, we're not showing up in E3 2020. And that's when we were talking, is like, man, it's like, you're not bringing like the biggest console manufacturer currently. Like, what is even the viability? And they were saying all these weird things about activations and like, and getting all these like weird brands that are gonna be part of E3. And obviously the pandemic happened and completely killed that on the crib. Then 2021, they were like, no, we're coming back, but we're just doing a digital only event. So everyone that wants to do their conferences, we're gonna host them. Kind of like what Keighley now does with... It's so funny, Keighley, like literally the day after Ubisoft said that we're not gonna go E3, Keighley was like, they're with us now, like we're like hosting their showcase now. So like, Keighley was ahead of the pack of where things were going, and he seems like he's facilitating all the developers to either have stage time to reveal their games, like we've seen successfully under Gamescoms and even the Game Awards this past December, which was incredible. Like, do you remember all the things that he announced just last December? That was like E3. That was like E3 caliber. Like, holy crap, that's like big ton, like
literally.
megatons. And obviously, Keighley not perfect. I lambasted his last Summer Game Fest. That was like, but that got away from his like the big things got leaked or had a showcase early on that like stole his thunder. Like basically the thunder, like this could have been the really cool first look at things. Either got leaked by Sony when like his close. Do you remember it was like his big closer was Last of Us Part 1, which is funny. We're gonna talk about it in our next story, and that got leaked early on. So and then he kept like asking Neil, like, hey, anything else? Like, what about the multiplayer? Like he was trying to, because he knew his thunder had been stolen. And
yep.
And then the Call of Duty and saying, no, we're gonna have gameplay and only have Call of Duty and Callisto Protocol gameplay and then nothing else for the rest of that show. So he's definitely gotten better since that. Like he took his calls. Like he definitely like took the beating, knowing that didn't work, and then he reworked it. And Gamescom was a success. Game Awards was a success. Now that we know E3 is finally like in the grave again, because I feel like we've talked about the death of E3 like 3 times in this show now, and it's finally back. Oh no, it's dead. It's back. It's dead. I feel like this is the time where it's like it has to be fully dead. And is that the dog?
There's a cat.
Oh, there it is.
This is the other one. This is Raspberry.
Raspberry. Hey, Raspberry, you finally got a cameo.
He usually never comes to hang out, but because he's just a wild child that never wants to sit still. But because my desk is so easily accessible next to the cat tree, he decided to come visit.
Oh
So
yeah,
there you go, buddy.
because
What do
it's
you think?
usually what was the other one? The black one that always looks like.
Felix.
Yeah, so Felix the cat always wants to like kill you. It looks like, but this one seemed more
Yep.
this one seemed more mellow.
As the vet once said, he's pretty and he knows it.
So back to this.
Yeah.
What made the because when they canceled E3 2022, I remember after Summer Game Fest came and went, and I was like, nothing really came out of that. I was like, maybe E3 was smart. They knew that there wasn't anything, so they decided not to put out anything because obviously, game development is so different and companies were not ready. And Keighley decided to put a show even when people were not ready. But then they made the point of
I
like,
remember when we talked about this, yeah. Because
Yeah.
we said the smart thing for them to do is to ready themselves, use this year off to prepare,
Mhm.
and then freaking hit the ground running and don't stop hitting. And they never got their feet back under them after
Yeah.
that year, which
just
is a shame.
think about this. It's like they made a big deal of hiring Reed Pop, the guys that made PAX successfully. Like after the pandemic finally allowed like conventions to go back again, PAX East, which Sebastian went last week, big success of a show. They have PAX Prime. I think it's this September or PAX West, whichever one it is. Like they do a couple PAXs throughout the year. Is like they have a well-oiled machine of how to like put on a show, even if it's not at the magnitude of E3. They literally them bringing repos like we know you guys do a good show like in current times. Come help us. If that didn't work, like if Repop being involved didn't convince developers to be like, yeah, now that you guys are in charge, yeah, we're gonna spend an ginormous amount of money for booth space in this very expensive LA convention center, and then it was like that's when I knew it was like as soon as like I knew that was cast when none of the big three were gonna be there. And Nintendo has not been in the show for conferences because of Nintendo Direct, but they were always in the show to like put booths like the legendary Breath of the Wild like booth that was all they had. Like they decked it like it was Hyrule for people to go there, and then the same thing they did for Super Mario Odyssey. They decked their booth like New Donk City, and had enough switches for people to go play that. Nintendo always was at the forefront of like, yeah, we're still gonna have booth space to have people try our games. Like when not even them were gonna come back. It's like that's when we knew it's like this E3 is like it's finally a relic of another era. This is the third time it's died. I think there's no way you can come back after that. That you can't come back after this. Like you absolutely can't. And
Somebody find a Lazarus pit because I don't think there's any other way E3's gonna
yeah,
come back.
yeah, especially because last year we gave in the past, like we just said, it's like okay, no one was ready. You took your year off. You were smart. Look, the egg that Keighley's getting right now for putting a show when there was nothing, and now this time no, it's like now things are ready. Things are coming out. People are ready to show their stuff, and this was if you're not coming this year, it's over. It's finally over. And Keighley mentioned that this is the first Summer Game Fest that's going to be open to the public. Also, so of him trying to take that E3 like idea, and if that works for him, because last year play dates for people that actually went to try games that worked for like the press. If that opens to the public and now it works, then it's like that's Summer Game Fest is officially E3. That's what we usually know.
Yeah.
As like our gaming Christmas. And I will always lament how all of this died because man, I wish we could have gone when it was at its peak, when there was excitement at the name of E3. It's so funny. It's like it feels like as soon as we announced that we're gonna start doing game coverage when Statics Media was a thing, that's when E3 was like on its death. Like when I did my reactions with our friend PJ, and we're like, wow, this sucked. Like this is sad. But then back then we're like, okay, it's like this probably sucks because next year is the next gen, so companies are like pulling back because they're saving all their big guns for next gen. So next year when they come back to 3, it's gonna be amazing because Sony will be back because they have to show their console. None of that happened, and who knows? Like rumors are that Sony apparently will have a showcase around the time of Summer Game Fest. But at this point, like it's just sad because now everyone can do it at their own time, and now there's no designated time to take off work to be like, today for this 2 days I'm watching conferences all day. That was tradition for me all the time. Sunday Mondays was always my I'm gonna like schedule vacation time, whatever I'm doing, because I'm just gonna watch them. I'll never forget doing that for 2018. That was such a great last E3. That was also the Sony one where they brought a flute guy a flute guide for Ghost of Tsushima. I remember.
Was it? Yeah, the Ghost of Tsushima, dude.
So, and
Mm.
I feel like people don't. I think the companies don't want public embarrassments anymore because how memeable was that?
It's like every once in a while you can get away with it, and somebody tries to be that person. But then you usually come down to what was it, Peggle 2?
Mm-hmm.
That one guy.
Oh god.
Um, yeah, it's I don't think there's any way to do it earnestly enough. Like
Or
you have to have some kind of level of tongue in cheek or meta narrative almost to get away with it nowadays.
yeah, but then everything just became like an unintentional meme in the last years of E3. Like I remember EA for E3 2016, the year of Battlefield 1 and Titanfall 2 and all of that. They hosted like a big live stream for Battlefield 1, and it was Snoop Dogg was like playing the game, and he was like smoking a bong. And like what playing, so the term "Weed 3" became a thing that entire year. Uh,
Oh my
so it's
gosh.
just a stupid thing like that. But it's like E3 has legendary moments. Like I will always treasure because I don't know, you probably don't remember many conferences, but I still vividly remember watching the 2015 and 2016 Sony conference, the one that revealed Final Fantasy VII remake, that brought back The Last Guardian, Shenmue 3 like coming back, and people like you see people standing and crying in the crowd because it was like a big like nostalgia play. The original reveal of God of War with the orchestra, the curtain lifting and then
I
starting.
watched that one.
Yeah, it was incredible. Like
Gosh, that was good.
yeah, especially like just imagine like, and then having the orchestra like, and Bear McCreary who then scored the
Yeah.
entire game, like scored that entire game live as like you were playing, like they were like perfectly in sync to demo that game with like the
Mhm.
live orchestra that then played through the entire conference. And
Which was the one with the Uncharted 4 and the dead controller?
oh, that was E3 2015.
There it is. Okay.
Yeah.
I definitely watched that one too. But yeah, it's the highs, the lows, everything in between. I'm going to miss E3, and I
Mm-hmm.
hope, I don't know, there's part of me that hopes that like somebody eventually kind of pulls it out of the grave and
Mm-hmm.
just does something different with
Yeah.
maybe the same name. Which of course, like nothing's gonna stay dead. It's just gonna be completely different under completely different people. It's just gonna use the same title.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
But I feel like an E3 convention where everyone goes to the Lake Convention Center, that idea is dead. It's like it's too
yeah,
it's just too cost prohibitive.
yeah.
Like I told you about like what Ains from my from Season Gaming, what
Hmm.
he was earmarking to try to like cover both Summer Game Fest and E3. That's just an exorbitant amount of money that I'm like, I'm not spending that, especially knowing how little like what was gonna be at E3. No, I was not gonna pay that kind of money. That's why I was like, I'll wait to hear how that goes, and maybe they bring it back in 2024. Maybe I'll start like saving just to see that they proved that it was gonna be right. Now, this is gonna save me money in the long run because I don't have to go to that. I'd rather go to PAX, where I know
Yeah.
a lot of the people from the that I work with go. A lot of industry people is like that's more like the meet and greets. That's like our buddy Sebastian enjoyed his time at PAX. That looked fun. And I saw like I was looking at some of the videos he was posting of the demos he got to show, like especially on the indie level. It would be cool to see someone like convince like the big developers that PAX is worth going and showing games, because it feels like it's always like a glass half full. Not every like big developer likes sending like a demo booth over there. So that's always
Mhm.
been the PAX has always been kind of like almost there but not quite, like for like gaming convention, but a cool place to like hang out. Buy I heard that many people buy old games there because they put the booth, so I would love to see what old stuff I could go buy over there. So RAP 3, I will always remember like
Yeah.
it's like from when I was knowledgeable about industry, when I first saw what E3 was in 2003 with a Game Informer magazine, and seeing like all like this list of games that I had not heard about, and seeing them like preview them and knowing, oh, so this is like what this is where we know about game announcements. That's cool. To now is like we live in a different era, and
Yeah.
sad that we never got to go. That will always break my heart. But I just hope that it evolves. Like maybe they will bring back the E3 name, and then it's like outside. Here's the thing: they have tried to do it outside the LA Convention Center, but they did it at Santa Monica, a pier. Like they did it like a
Hmm.
Santa Monica pier that was just for like media only. Like no people could like attend, and that didn't work. And then they brought back E3 in 2008 to LA Convention Center just for media people. That didn't work either. So then they tried to like open it up again in like 2009, and from 2009 to 27 to 2018, relatively smooth sailing from there. It's like, okay, we figure it out again. to
Yeah,
make this
it
work.
doesn't help that like that was the whole transition from like cable TV, which is where I used to like record it and watch
Hmm.
it on TV, to easily accessible on the internet. And it was like you either had to find it during that time or you could never find it again.
Hmm.
So it was a lot more of a draw to go physically in person. It's not the same. It
Oh yeah.
hasn't ever been.
So now we just have to like rely on like the ones that had decided to do showcases like by themselves with like their live streams and all of that.
Yeah.
At the very least, I commend Microsoft for always committing for a big showcase around June. That's always something that I look forward to from them. Even though they're
Very
always
true.
they're always the ones that I'm like, will this be the one that's gonna blow my socks off and be like, yeah, Xbox is here now for to fight. And there's always like they're really cool stuff, but that's always been their showcase. It's just the 2021 one that had all the 27 games on Game Pass that were like, oh man, like all of this is gonna be like for free in subscription. That's some big D energy of like, look what we have if you just pay us that, and then Sony that just decides to do whatever the frick they want. And rumors are that they're finally gonna talk. We'll see. That's probably the worst part about being a PlayStation fan with like the death of E3. Sony forsaking E3 has meant that us getting news from them has been way more erratic, way more erratic, and that sucks because it makes you feel like you're something's left up to. How often have we been like, what even is there? It's like we're like starving here. Say something. Like that's been the rough part of being like a PlayStation fan and the PS5 generation compared to others, where they will always be talking, but they're selling like through the roof right now. So it's like they're being rewarded for their silence, which sucks. But
Yeah.
they're certainly not going to be rewarded for this. Story number 2. The first Last of Us PC patch focuses on stability and performance improvements. So, The Last of Us Part 1 released in Tuesday after suffering a short delay from earlier in March, and has received mostly negative reviews on Steam, with a significant number of players complaining about performance issues and crashes. Story by Tom Ivan from BGC. The game's first update was released on Wednesday. Naughty Dog said it primarily focuses on stability and performance improvements alongside other smaller ones. The patch notes read, fixed several performance and hit-related issues impacting some users. Note, additional improvements and investigations based on user feedback are underway. Added extra crash diagnostic information to assist in investigating shader building related crashes and other common reported stability issues. The team is closely watching player reports and actively working on a patch with more bug fixes to be released soon, Naughty Dog added. It also said it's currently investigating the following issues. Loading shaders takes longer than expected. Performance and stability is degraded while shaders are loading in the background. Oh, I've seen that happen in real time, I tell you. Older graphics drivers leads to instability or graphical problems. Game may be unable to boot despite meeting the minimum system requirements. A potential memory leak. Mouse and camera jitter for some players, depending on hardware and display settings. The PC port was handled by Naughty Dog and Iron Galaxy, which also teamed up to bring Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection to PC last year. This doesn't... I don't think we'll be able to show this, Paul, but some of the things that I've been seeing of this PC port... I was sending some screenshots to you, some videos. It's like, they're Cyberpunk level embarrassing. They're like,
It's bad.
Absolutely.
For a game that is normally deep on immersion, on performance, on like near perfect execution every time you play it. I mean, like it's either F Ubisoft or what's Naughty Dog been doing?
Or E3.
And once again with Naughty Dog,
Uh-huh.
they are some of like the most polished games that I've ever played. Last of Us is
always.
one of the best examples of a game that I've probably, if not never, maybe once or twice, like minor glitches here and there. Nothing to this extent. This is, like you said, Cyberpunk levels of everything's busted. The code was not written to go on PC, clearly. And I think we had talked about this before. It's not even being done by like a first party studio. It's completely like some other company that they outsourced it to try to do this. And this is kind of unacceptable behavior, honestly. This is super messed up, and I'm so glad that I play on console and not on PC, where everybody's like, oh, thanks for beta testing it for us, and it's like, guess what, buddy? That's not how it works, and suck it.
Yeah, so. It's like, the worst part is that the port quality of PlayStation going to PC, like other than Horizon originally, which was their first test that didn't go super well initially, but they patched it to be more stable, have been relatively solid. The God of War PC port and the Spider-Man PC port I've heard were excellent.
True.
So out of all of this, like The Last of Us is one of their most celebrated games. Just finished a TV show that is gonna like rake many awards whenever the Emmys comes around after early next year, and I don't understand why you would then rush this like in this state for like a big pool of player population that is PC and not being up to snuff, especially when everything else that they release has been relatively up to snuff. Like Days Gone is more polished than this, Paul. Days Gone, like the PC port, it's like that just
I can't believe that's a sentence that exists.
Exactly, right? Especially when like what you like consider with Naughty Dog, it's like you said it like perfectly. It's like Naughty Dog, whatever you think about their games, like the objective fact about their games is that no one does polish like them. Like their games are so pristine in almost everything that they released, even way back in the PS2, like with the Jack games and to Crash Bandicoot, that this is so on Naughty Dog and such and absolutely unacceptable. The fact that they never, you know that they didn't send review copies to anyone? That's when you know. Like no one receives it's in the article. It says unusually for a Sony Interactive Entertainment game, 0 reviews for the title have been published on Metacritic 2 days after its release, suggesting that press either did not receive review code or did so extremely late. It's like, this is how you kill goodwill. You absolutely kill goodwill doing this. And I tell you, for the very pretentious PlayStation side of people that are all about it, PlayStation is about quality. That's what defines this thing, and that's what we stand as.
Yeah.
This is a big, like, even though it's polished in the system that it originally launched, is like, to me, it's like everything that you put under your name, regardless of platform, has to be polished, no matter what. Like Arkham Knight, another game that was like working well on console, but the PC release was a nightmare. The Cyberpunk situation, the opposite. PC was great, everything else was effed. It's like, that's just not acceptable because you have paying customers that play on those systems. Like everyone deserves at least a functional video game, no matter what. Even if another version is technically better because the hardware is better. But something like this, real with the things like the blackface Joel that we saw because the shader was just not loading, that was. please, Paul, put that in the thumbnail. Right now that I'm thinking about, like, grab that and just put that in the thumbnail. And the one with the low settings of Joel that it looks like with the big eyebrows, it's like some stuff that I'm seeing of this thing is incredible. It's absolutely incredible. So,
gosh,
oh man, it's like they deserve egg. It's like, I love Naughty Dog, but it's like they delayed this from March 3rd. Why didn't you delay it further? Maybe wait until like the Blu-ray release back like in June.
Yeah.
Give yourself enough time for this to work.
At this point, I don't know why they even bothered to release it at this point. Like, the only thing I can think is, well, it's fiscal year and trying to coincide with the ending of the TV show is like all I can think of, and it's failure on at least one of those, and the other one is like, well, great, you beat the fiscal year, you can at least write off your loss on the taxes. Congratulations.
Yeah, because I think they also, their fiscal year also ends in March, so that hits, that kind of makes sense a little bit. But what's nice is that originally this was going to come out on March 3rd, the day the finale, like the same week of the finale. So that was originally their plan. They were totally going to synergize with like the ending, but then they pushed it because it wasn't ready. They should have pushed it more. Like having this kind of quality under like your title is like this. If you're being serious about trying to release things on PC, like this is the kind of thing that gets egg on your face, and no one's gonna believe that you care about PC like you say you want to. Is like this, like that's the one area where Microsoft also, like, they were struggling early on to get good PC ports of their exclusives, and eventually they got there. Like it consistently, like you could play a quality port on PC if you have a good PC. Is like this is really strange that this game out of all of them is the one that has like released so bad, and that's sad. It's like what a way to like eliminate all goodwill you've engendered so far. So speaking of like maybe like eliminating some of your goodwill, story number 3 by Marcus Stewart from Game Informer, Paul. Multiverses is being taken offline to relaunch in 2024. Multiverses, the free-to-play Super Smash Bros. Style fighting game starring an all-star cast of Warner Bros. Characters, will be pulled from storefronts next month. The game's online modes will later become unplayable as developer Player First Games plans for a relaunch in early next year. In a developer blog post, Player First Games CEO Tony Huan explains that since Multiverses launched in open beta, yes, open beta, last July, players have offered a ton of feedback. The studio feels that the only way to properly implement improvements based on these fan requests is to shut the game down temporarily, Hoon writes. We know there's still a lot of work to do. As a result, we have a clear view of what we need to focus on, specifically the content cadence of new characters, maps, and modes to give you more ways to enjoy the game, along with updated netcode and more matchmaking improvements. We'll also be reworking the progression system based on your feedback and looking at new ways for you to connect with your friends in the game. As a result, Multiverse is getting pulled from online stores on April 4th, so just a few days from now. While new players won't be able to download it, those who already have it in their libraries can still reinstall it after that date. On June 25, the game's online servers will be shut down along with any associated features. After that, players will only have limited access to offline modes such as the training room and local matches. Purchased in-game content such as characters, items, battle pass tokens, and unused currency will carry over when Multiverses returns in early 2024. The Season 2 Battle Pass will also be extended through June 25th. Daily missions will continue to be added, but the weekly seasonal milestones will no longer refresh after March 31st. Those seeking refunds will have to take it up with their chosen storefront, as an FAQ states. This announcement does not change any current refund policies or terms offered by the storefronts from which Founders Packs or Gleamium bundles were purchased. I'll say this.
Go ahead.
Yes, you can take a lot of feedback, a bunch of stuff to improve your game. I don't remember when this launched that this was an open beta. I don't remember that.
It technically was from the start. I was kind of doing some digging on it, and I vaguely remembered that it said open beta when I downloaded it and played it for like one day. So technically, apparently this was always the plan, but just nobody paid attention or listened or talked about it. And it was just one of those things. It's such a weird decision.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, look at all these games out here that just stay in open beta. You just keep the game live. You just keep iterating on it. And then one day you're like, yeah, this is the full result. I mean, look at your Grounded. You look at your Overwatch. You look at your PUBG. Golly, I could not say that. Warzone. Everything. Nowadays you just keep it up and you let people keep doing their thing, and it's like it doesn't really matter if people kind of drop off on it for whatever reason. Like there's still people paying money, buying it. You just kind of keep going. Why in the world do you pull the entire thing for a whole year?
Exactly. After you ask for money. That's because here's like the worst part of all this. Like, yes, you can say open beta. We've seen many open betas that are limited time and then they get shut off. And for example, Diablo recently. Oh, I didn't talk about Diablo. Oh yeah, Diablo was really great, by the way, people. That I can't wait for that thing to come out on whenever it comes out in June 6th. That was a limited beta. That's been shut off. You can't play it until the full game releases. What's the big difference? They didn't charge you money for skins, like your equivalent of premium currency, to then shut the game off. Like at a point where you're asking for money, do you have the expectation of your game at least staying online, unless it's like you're finally killing it for like forever, when it's like, oh yeah, no one's playing, so we're shutting the server stuff. That it's normal, but asking for that money and then being like, no, we're gonna take it down and not wait an entire year to release it, and not giving anyone any refunds, expecting like they will have that thing online like at least for a good while without like the game not being officially killed. That it seems very disgusting. And if they feel like they can take, then they can do that for an entire year. They will come back, maybe like, and everyone's gonna care. It's like, I'm sorry. It's like, you should have been, if you wanted to do like an open beta, you should have launched an open beta and then take it down back there, because you're like, we're stress testing, this is how it's gonna be. Like, no, they launched this like a Fortnite. This is like how Fortnite was like an early access for like freaking forever until they finally removed the moniker, because when you're asking people to give you money, you're basically out of beta and in early access. That's what you are. So I feel like they deserve all egg, and I tell you, they're gonna come back. Especially when we heard that this game lost 99% of their player base, like just recently. Like when we were having like all that live service talk, and obviously that made sense because it was like they had not updated that game in forever. Like where were the new characters? It's like you need to at least give a cadence of what your new characters are gonna be or when to expect, and kind of like what Smash did. Yeah, well, you were not always getting characters, but Nintendo made sure to give you a time frame, and no matter what, they always hit their time frame. In fact, then they added even more afterwards. That's how you kind of keep your player base active in this kind of game, because you know that eventually something more is happening. They were not doing that. So them saying this and not pulling it off, it's like almost wanting kind of like getting into that whole, the game's a failure, shutting it off, but not saying that. And they're gonna try to relaunch it, but the moment you ask for like that money, it's over. It's like you just burn goodwill, because you're basically just scam people. Like, give us money to have all these characters. Now you won't be able to play this for a year. Like, why? Like, you can totally leave the game online, like as it is, as you do your work. So
this is WB we're talking about. Like they have the money.
Absolutely, yeah. Especially they recently got all the money with Hogwarts Legacy. You can't tell me like with RWB games that you don't have that to be able to like keep this on. So they just probably were like the egg of talking about so much egg this week. The egg of like losing 99% of your player base. That's like a headline that probably like hurt them, like be like, oh yes, like there's that game that no one's playing. That's probably why they did it, but it's like, who cares? As soon as someone you give money, like I hope no one else does this, that they try to then pull the it's open beta card, even though we asked you for money for it. It's like, no, as soon as you start asking for money, the thing remains on unless you're like officially decommissioning, which has happened. So screw you, WB, with that. So final story, Paul. I wanted to leave this one because it can be like a double story for us, because we usually don't do like, oh, this is how it looked thing preview, but this also something that can be newsworthy, and we can give our thoughts of this. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom gameplay trailer shows off 4 of Link's new abilities. Story by Wesley LeBlanc from Game Informer. And final story for today: development on The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is not complete, so it's went gold. It's coming actually in May 12th. Finally. The Legend of series producer Eiji Onuma revealed this during a Tears of the Kingdom gameplay showcase earlier this week. He then jumped directly into the game, showing off more than 10 minutes of new gameplay. Onuma begins this demonstration by showing how Link can get up to the Sky Islands floating above Hyrule. He uses the Recall power, which rewinds an object's movement, to reverse a fallen rock's descent. He's able to reach one of the floating Sky Islands using this new power. After fighting an enemy up here, we learned that weapon durability, a hotly debated feature of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, is back. Indeed it is. But now, you can use Link's new fuse ability to create brand new weapons. Onuma showed us how to fuse a branch with a boulder to create a giant hammer, promising that you can do all sorts of things with this new ability. You can even fuse 2 weapons together and fuse ingredients to arrows to create variations such as homing arrows or more. That was such a cool moment though, like seeing... Do you remember when they put the eye and then the thing just curves?
The homing arrow was really cool, I'll be honest.
Onuma's discussion about fuse transitioned nicely into one of the new features in Tears of the Kingdom: vehicle creation, or something that appears to be called Ultra Hand. By the way, are you calling it Ultra Hand?
It's kind of weird, but there's a part of it that kind of sounds really cool. I mean, it sounds like some kind of weird 90s anime to VHS villain. Yes, I am the Ultra Hand.
Yeah.
It just...
to me, considering the shapes that you can like form in this thing, calling it Ultra Hand makes it even grosser. So, yeah. Okay, back.
I mean, it's just gonna happen the second you give people creativity.
Oh yeah, it's like
when
you get
to Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah. While creative players created all kinds of vehicles in Breath of the Wild, like vehicles, quote unquote, it seems Tears of the Kingdom's Ultra Hand will help us all create new ways to get around Hyrule's plains, rivers, and more. In this instance, Onuma creates a boat to cross a body of water. Another new ability is Ascend. Basically, if there's a ceiling above Link, he can teleport through it to reach whatever lies on top. This can be used to instantly climb through mountains where there are caves, out of enclosures, and more. This, of course, is just a taste of what's to come in Tears of the Kingdom this May. So, Paul, In your unfiltered initial impressions of this 10-minute gameplay, go.
It started weak and ended strong because I did not like the recall ability all that much. It seemed like you were just sitting there waiting for things to happen. I just pictured, like, especially this day and age, the level of what you're kind of needing to get from one space to the next. We've talked about the whole fast travel thing and solid state drives and that not being an issue anymore. This almost feels like a loading screen built into the game. It is just literally a feature. But jokes aside and bad faith arguments aside, it's kind of cool because you think about what needed to change in Hyrule for them to be able to do this. Really, there wasn't a lot that you could do, especially since we knew it was taking place in the same Hyrule. What do? You rip up the ground, add stuff in the air, stuff below. It just gives you more verticality. So this is like a no-brainer. You need to some way to easily get up there. From there, fuse, really interesting concept. I know I told you that I was a little not big on it because I really like a simple just hold your sword and go fight the evil. I don't want to deal with a stick and a rock. I don't want to deal with all that other stuff. But as I was thinking about it, I was like, there's probably some pretty cool stuff that I'm going to be able to do with the actual weapons, combining them and whatever. And so it's like, it's cool. I like the creativity that it offers. Then I got really interested because one of the things that I was really interested in the first trailer was the weird rolling car. And now with Ultra Hand, being able to just build vehicles, whatever you really want.
With whatever's in the world.
With whatever's in the world, I can see so much weird, goofy nonsense going down with this that I love it. I love that there's, like, as long as they give you the resources all over the place, like those fans, the wheels, whatever it is, and then let me actually build it. It's not like, hey, you got to go to this very specific area and you can build the thing. But then also you think about it, you're not going to have a whole lot of opportunity. And even if you do have opportunity, you're not going to have a lot of control over them. Because they said, all right, well, there's like the 2 fans. Well, cool. What if you have 1 fan? What if you have the wheels, but you can't turn the vehicle? And it's like, there's only so much you can kind of do almost, unless they really flesh that out and give that to you from the start. Because as we know, they don't patch stuff in these games. Lastly, Ascend, probably my favorite ability of this, because of course this is the one bane of everybody's existence in that Breath of the Wild. Was climbing to the top, losing your stamina, or you're climbing and it starts to rain, and like you're just like, well, I'm trapped in here. This sucks. And now all you have to do is, theoretically, they're going to add a lot of caves so that you could just zip to the top of a whatever it is, mountain,
ceiling,
platform, anything. And as long as there is a ceiling, even stating verbally that if you're in a cage, you can just zip out of it using this ability. It's like, there's a lot of application for something like that. And it's like very quality of life to just let you get that ability to survey your area and then jump off and glide to the next zone that you want. It's like, you don't have to waste your time, you know?
And you know what's the thing that interests me the most about all of that? Do you see how many hearts Elnuma had in this demo?
4?
Starting. So it feels like we're gonna get all of that from moment 1.
Huh. Yeah, that is a good point. I mean, I guess I kind of figured, because just like in Breath of the Wild 2017, it was like, it was 2017, right? Not 18?
2017.
Okay. Yeah. That was like the big thing about Breath of the Wild was you could just have everything. Was it freezing powers, the stop, the the magnetic power,
the magnetic power,
like,
the 2 bombs, the square and circle bombs.
Yeah. And that was just like, that was your starting point, that was your tutorial, and then it's like, all right, here's the world. So I almost kind of expected it to an extent. What I'm curious about, that I'm looking at in these screenshots, is look at the top left and you see there's like
a hand, like a hand icon.
Is that the new ability, or is that something completely different that I'm not recognizing?
Yeah, that's something new, because that wasn't in Breath of the Wild.
I think that's just Ultra Hand, Fuse, and Recall. I guess it's just that's selected.
Yeah, I think it's gonna take the place of I wonder if all of the abilities that you could do in Breath of the Wild are gonna come back on top of all of these. Like, do you know how they had the
Oh, I
line if they're
definitely
gonna?
think so.
Yeah, these are the ones that are gonna be added to it. So
Now, what I'm noticing is the hotkeys are different because up wasn't to eat, wasn't it?
no.
That was holding up was pulling up your powers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be interesting to see like kind of what they're doing
What they're
to
nip
really
and
change
tucking,
things
what
up.
they're tweaking.
Exactly.
So, I'll say this with like with my reactions to like seeing this. So, getting it out of the way, it looks old. It definitely looks like Breath of the Wild, but that was 2017, and there's maybe slightly better lighting, kind of how I was mentioning that. You looked at Pokemon Pokemon Arceus, and then you just saw the same engine used in the in Scarlet and Violet, and I was like, oh, I see some more vibrancy to like what is still basically a thing. Yeah, I think the same thing is happening here. So definitely, it's like doesn't look up to scrutiny visually like to what we get now with our modern hardware. However, when they introduced the fuse mechanic to me, thinking of the way Breath of the Wild, like the crazy videos we always get of Breath of the Wild of seeing people find the ways that the baked physics engine that's into the design has been like exploited by players in a way that is like one more thing. Oh, you're breaking the game. No, you're like, it's working as intended. Like the game is like designed to do that. Taking that concept into like the same size of open world plus more scale by having like all the biomes in the sky. That's like seamless going back and forth like in a Switch, which is when you think about how old the hardware is, that you're able to like see so much like available to you, and that it's kind of unbelievable. Seeing that, thinking of the ways that Nintendo's leaning more into like they saw how people played Breath of the Wild like years after the fact, and then they're like, you know what, you guys are very creative, let us give us more tools for you to see the level of creativity as you can have. It's like I can already picture years down the line like getting even more of what we were seeing from Breath of the Wild with this. And kind of like I was mentioning, I feel like with my epiphany towards like my thoughts of Elden Ring, how like enduring like influential design is the thing that stands the test of time. The big, like I've always said that to me, Breath of the Wild as a Zelda game is overrated. Like I love my dungeons, I love my like more direct stories and memorable soundtracks and all that I didn't think Breath of the Wild had. But I've always respected Breath of the Wild for the innovations it made for open worlds. And just like many have taken the Breath of the Wild diegetic design into inspirations. I mentioned it in our last talk with Sebastian, like something like Ghost of Tsushima, that definitely is still an Ubisoft style open world checklist game that its in-game design was inspired by Breath of the Wild. You following the wind, looking at like the things are designed. That's like things that Breath of the Wild popularized, when other open worlds is like just follow the question mark in the map, go just clean the map just by the checklist, and seeing how developers are taking inspiration of that. Now I wonder if this game, like if it works as intended, like if everything that they're mentioned, that everything in the world that is usually very interactable, and Breath of the Wild was very interactable, and they take that level of interactive physics to a new level in a way that doesn't break. Could this be then the next thing that developers pursue in open worlds? Obviously, we already saw the realization of Breath of the Wild's like open world design with Elden Ring. They took that and put it in a game that didn't have breakable weapons. It was more fun to play, to me personally. But
yeah,
but I look at this academically and thinking, man, it's like, yeah, it may not be a looker, but I feel Nintendo, like with all the how long they've taken to do a sequel to this thing, the entire generation, because remember they wanted to do DLC, and they were like, you know what? Why do DLC? Let's just do a full game. Well, it was having some similarities to the old one, kind of like God of War Ragnarok. So
yeah,
that was like a lot of that game looks like the original one, but then they added on top of it and to become a worthwhile sequel. This may not look like visually like a $70 game. I think someone could make the argument about that. I would feel much better if this was like the launch game for the new Switch, like with that price. But from a design perspective, it's just with like the fusion mechanics specifically. More like the recall to me is more like it's just like that's quality of life. Cool. Now I don't have to. You mentioned it's like I'll get to go up and down the place much quicker. That's so much fun. I've got to be able to explore that world, like not feel like such a slog at times. But like, here's Gecko Link going up. Hey cat, here the cat really wants to like, be part of this show. I love it.
Yep. All right, buddy.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway,
Beater. Let's see how long you can keep her or him. Raspberry.
him.
Okay.
He is a him.
Okay.
But he's a very cuddleable. He'll just chill here for a minute.
Yeah. Hey, like
But
he
anyway,
has a
you
different
were
face.
saying.
So yeah. So
Yeah.
I can't wait to see how all of this works in practice. And if it does, like, that's gonna, I tell you again, Nintendo, like, being the trailblazers. It's like we can say everything about them, but when it comes to game design, it's like it or not, like they love they love like setting the way for how games are made. And I feel this could happen. And when I was like, I put this as my number 9 in when we did most anticipating back in January, because to me Zelda, so like any new Zelda game I'm still gonna play regardless of how I feel. I mean, I even played Skyward Sword and we know how I feel about Skyward Sword. This is still a franchise that to me the world stops when it launches. But I was ambivalent towards this, other than just being a new Zelda game, to now like, oh man, I can't wait to see what kind of creative things it allows me to do, and I can't wait to see what the internet does with this creativity. Now it's like, I get the excitement for this game. Like, I get it now. Like,
it's a different method of solving the problem that Elden Ring created, because now it's not going to be a case of, well, what did they do new? It's now, oh my goodness, we have hundreds of different materials, weapons, things in the environment, transportation things, and now there's going to be just millions of videos, articles. What's the best combination? What's the secret awesome material that you're going to find? What's that one thing that you just didn't see coming? And of course, in like the next 5 years, there's still going to be people finding a different combination to something that you just never expected.
It becomes a game of endless possibilities. And that's like such an exciting idea. Like something that you put the game, like you play it, you put it back, and then you see a weird video of like someone there, you were like, what? Can I do that? And then you put it back in. It's like, I tell you, that's what's gonna happen. That's the most exciting thing about this.
Good on them for seeing that process ahead of time. Clearly planning the entire game around this all the way forever ago, and somehow sidestepping the whole issue in one fell swoop, because now it's not going to be that, oh my gosh, the durability's still there, the Elden Ring did this better. It's going to be everything like we just said. It's like,
now you can make weapons of you can make weapons of everything, and they like last more. So it's like, now it's like the weapon durability thing is like, instead of just being the fragility of like 4 hits, okay, it's broken. Now it's like, no, like stick it with a rock, it can last you more. Oh, what if you like stick these 2 things together, make like a super large pole, and the thing with the bow and arrow, like, oh yeah, you don't have wicked aim. Put this specific like element that makes it like a homing thing, and what else could you like? It definitely looks like everything is game with like the different combinations of things you can get from this, and I just can't wait to see how, other than how I do it, because that's the thing. Like, god damn it, my dog, she loves, yeah. Oh man, gotta love her. But now I can't wait to see like how everything works, because Nintendo's very intentional about how it does this, and May can't come soon enough. It's like, thank you, Nintendo. Like, I'll give Nintendo this. Like, they got me out of my apathy. They got me out of my ambivalence of just like another sequel to this game that everyone calls the greatest game ever, and I don't agree with that. Now I see this as like, you know what, Nintendo's like, now it's like, I know what this is. I want to see how you evolve this, and that excites me. That finally excites me, and can't wait to see like how it, like, because we know this game, like, this is the one game that I'm not gonna be eagerly looking for reviews. We know how it's gonna score. We already know, like, people are in the tank. It's more like I want to see like how the world reacts to this and how they like manipulate it. That's the thing that makes me more excited, not from a critical sense, because I just know what it is, and I know how people will feel about it, just like they feel with the other one. But I'm glad that I can move on from like that snarky like feeling of like, yeah, I know, it's like, sure, whatever. I mean, it's like, obviously the $70 conversation will be the one that will be hotly debated forever.
Yeah,
just like on the looks. But I tell you, it's like, if you're one that is like about how much money you like, how much you can extract out of a game, it justifies it from that angle for people that care about that. So
yeah. I'm not happy about it, but well, under my own rules, I have to accept it.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, just imagine like how infinitely replayable this can be now with all the different combinations you can get out of the. It's like, that seems cheap. So
for what you can get out of it.
Yeah,
Boy, oh boy.
And the truth reality is, Paul, is like, and I mentioned this, like, and I have to say it publicly, is like, I don't care how pretty a game is or how great a story is. Those are things that are easily improved by a sequel, and things get dated because of that. Design, like intentional design, is what stands the test of time. And I feel Nintendo is like building. Nintendo's like really focusing on it because they know they can't compete visually. They can't. It's like, look this next to something like Horizon Forbidden West. That game is infinitely prettier, but the design of that game way less interesting. With just the idea of like a very malleable open world like this. So
Yeah.
that's why I don't buy into that into the idea that you can only define like a game's price by how pretty it looks and like the bells and whistles and things like that. I feel like you have to take into consideration like an intent of the game, and definitely Nintendo's playing to their strength. Their strength is design, and
Let's like to come full circle. You look at something like Resident Evil 4, and why 2005's version still looks so good is because while it used realistic elements, it just like you said, the style was so specific and focused that despite the tech jump of almost 20 years now, it still holds up. And it's like all you do is you iterate on that style to continue the process. And like, yeah, it looks prettier now on remake, but it's like, just like you said, it's the same.
It's design, yeah, and in Resident Evil is not just visual design, but just like the game design is like so many of those tenets were brought into the Resident Evil remake. Like that was like baked way back then. That's what made it revolutionary. That's why what they brought like intact and modernized here. It's like there's such importance into design. Like Elden Ring will stand the test of time, not visually or in storytelling, but it's design. Like
absolutely,
and design is like the key core like component of a video game. Everything else is just embellishment. It's like because I see like I love Horizon, I love God of War. Like those games speak to me like in a specific thing, but I'm also can recognize that those games like they can easily be overtaken by everyone doing what they already do better because technology goes. Like this kind of design is like more intentional, and with that intention, it's taking me a while to like recognize like how much the importance of that's why I say like not my favorite Zelda, but I respect Breath of the Wild because now I see it, because I see like the importance. And goddamn, I think my dog is like really pushing me to just to wrap it up. But good thing we're at the end. But I tell you, it's like I'm glad that I'm excited. Like I legit excited just beyond just being another Zelda. Again, Zelda will always be Zelda for me. I'm once I'm done with Resident Evil 4 and a replay of BioShock Infinite that I kind of mentioned to you, and
seeing I'm excited for that.
Yeah, and seeing if I finish Hogwarts Legacy in this gap I have until Jedi Survivor, I want to see if I can finish the other old Zeldas, like get back into that mood before we get into this one. And those games are so different. It's like that. It's not like you can get burnt out of one.
From one to the next is a completely different game, almost from a different series, just sharing similar names. Sometimes.
Exactly. So that's why I'm not worried about like a potential burnout.
Yeah.
So I can't wait, and I'm just glad because that's the thing. Like I had hated how much like that my ambivalence towards Breath of the Wild was like getting shaded by the goat talks and all of that, and me thinking it's really good, but it's like greatest game of all time. No, like I could like nitpick enough of it to be like. This is
greatest, most accessible game of all time.
Maybe. Or greatest,
because
most
it's just
creative.
So many more people played it.
Oh yeah.
Just per capita almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not only that, but and the greatest, most like creative, like exploitative game of all time that doesn't break. Maybe. But greatest game ever made. That's kind of like what was jading me about it with how long we were waiting for that. But now seeing this, I'm like, ooh. Oh yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait to what they teach. But what can developers learn from this? Like
I like the idea of what they said, where this game was done in 2019, and they just had all this time that they needed to go through every combination of things to see what would happen
and clean it. And that's the thing with Nintendo's like
clean.
Other than the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, which like was breaking catastrophically, like in the glitches and all that, but that was also a game made in less than a year. Like at least main Nintendo is known for, like we're talking about Naughty Dog. There's some developers are known for their prestige quality control of like making sure, and that's the greatest achievement of a game of the size of Breath of the Wild on a Switch. Like The only technical blemish was its frame rate and resolution, but the game was functional like in when people were trying to break it. It's an impressive feat of design to like be able to design that, because how often do you break games, Paul? Like all the time. Like it's very easy to
Constantly.
get it. Yeah, it's to the point that sometimes I question if your console's like about to die or something. That
I think I'm just good like that.
that's about Nintendo knows that kind of qualities. Like I want to see how that ethos, like if they can maintain that ethos when now like physics are gonna be more manipulated than they were before. That's what makes me like more curious and excited about the new one, because now I know they're just not doing, oh yeah, it's just more Breath of the Wild. Now we know it's like, no, we're adding more stuff to this. Like we're playing on what we had there, we're adding stuff. So can't wait for May 12th. It's coming soon, month and a week. Wait. So I hope I finish Jedi Survivor on time. I don't know how much longer it is. Preview. There's gonna be a preview cycle for Survivor like next week. I saw many people were like, "Thank you, Respawn, for inviting me to play Jedi Survivor." So we're gonna hear more impressions about it soon.
Oh boy.
So I just hope it's not a massive game. I hope that it's like a meaty enough game. Like Jedi Fallen Order was fairly decent in its length. It wasn't like too long. It was right. If with its length, let's see if like it goes longer with Survivor. But because I'm reviewing that, I just hope it doesn't take me too long and this comes in, because I will definitely want to jump into this. That's how close it is.
Yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen to me, honestly, whenever I keep wanting to say Breath of the Wild too. Tears of the Kingdom comes out. If I'm not done with Jedi Survivor, it depends on how Jedi Survivor's been treating me, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see. Shoot.
I'd be very shocked, Paul, if we don't love Jedi Survivor. I would be shocked to my core if we don't, because kind of like I've been mentioning, it's like they had such a strong core in such a flawed first game that's been cleaned up over time with the new versions and all that. That core, that strong core, should only go up. Like now that they have money, time, and care. Like every time that I look at that game, it's like this looks like what I remember it looking, and then I go back to Jedi Fallen Order. It's like no, it's like the Survivor looks like a legit improvement. Like it looks like that. I'm just so glad that they proved their worth, and I'm glad that EA saw the worth, and that they're like, now we're giving you the budget we gave to Battlefront. Because they didn't give them the budget for this one. It was like, yeah, just do it. Just have it there. Yeah, you wanted the single player. Yeah, we're going to give all the money for them to fix Battlefront. And they were like, no, Jedi Fallen Order, beer seller. So, and can't wait. And can't wait for it to be a licensed game, so then I can have a new bar of like what I think is like in production quality, great license game. Because currently, as of right now, it's Hogwarts. Outside of just the game.
For production value, exactly. I guess. That's a whole thing in discussion that I feel like I want to revisit properly one day, but I guess we'll see.
No, well, that's the thing. I can easily see other things like overtaken. I'm still very impressed that game in its first try came out looking like that, even though I know it's buggy. Like, I've seen your clips, I've seen other clips, but it's like for a first attempt, like it's still worth the praise, even though like other games have been better than Hogwarts this year. I can totally say that. Like. That's objective fact, but yeah, enough of that, Paul. That's the end of the news. Let's read what's coming for April now. Like, we're so close to April. Yeah. April Fools is a Saturday, Paul. April Fools is a Saturday. So.
Oh, Lord. So, yeah, this is the releases from March 26th to April 1st.
No. Sorry. It's April 3rd.
Yes, April 2nd.
Yeah.
3rd.
Yeah. April.
Starting with 4th, really.
Yes.
But, yeah. 3rd to the
9th
to the 9th. Yeah, so. I can't math anymore. Yeah. But yeah, 3rd to the 9th, April 3rd to the 9th, 2023. So, Creed Rise to Glory Championship Edition, PlayStation VR 2 on April 4th. Grim Grimoire Once More on PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, and Switch on April 4th. Hogwarts Legacy's last-gen versions on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One on April 4th.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see how they look. I bet you those things are going to be hideous. I tell you already. I know they're going to be hideous. So
then Meet Your Maker on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PC on April 4th. This game is going to be on PlayStation Plus Essentials for April. Road 96... Mile Zero. Sorry, I couldn't read for a second. PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC on April 4th. Batora Lost Haven on Switch for April 6th. Curse of the Sea Rats, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC on April 6th. It's Everspace 2 on PC on April 6th. Is this supposed to eventually get a
I
console
I would
release?
I would assume, but who knows? Like, you
Yeah.
never know with these things.
Paparazzi on Switch for April 6th, and lastly, EA Sports PGA Tour on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC on April 7th.
And nothing weak for me. There's nothing here of
Yeah.
like interest. Meteor Maker,
I'm
it's a PS
definitely gonna
Plus.
download it and play it whenever I finally get internet.
Oh yes, and
And
one game that
I've
I might,
heard, yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah, what are you saying?
I was saying, if I had VR, I've heard really good things about the Creed game.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if that's the same one or if they made a series of that, but yeah, I've seen people play it and it looks fun.
yeah, but yeah,
Anyway,
we
what were you
didn't.
gonna
Oh
say?
yeah, we didn't talk about VR too. That the it's apparently its sales are catastrophic.
Ooh, yeah,
Yeah,
they're not doing well. Last
but
news segment of the day.
oh yeah, but it's like because
Um,
we don't barely talk about VR, but that's like the
it's what
biggest.
we expected. I think we
Yeah,
called our shot
yeah.
like 6 months ago.
Hashtag no shit is like what I say because it's like a $550 VR unit on top of like an already expensive console in a recession economy. Is like, of course, it was not gonna do well, especially when they launched
I
it. So,
mean, it was a good attempt because they were bringing out almost 50 games for it day one, but it
mm-hmm.
makes sense. I mean, it's more expensive than a PS5
Yeah,
and it's less accessible for so many things. It's just not going to work out
yeah,
like
and
that.
also Sony's history of like abandoning things that are not like the main console, and that's kind of like my, especially if it's gonna be not selling well. I'm just scared that right now they're like because we saw it in the last state of play. There was a section, albeit quick, of them showing VR games because it's like they kind of have to sell this thing, but then you're kind of like in the back of your mind, are like, I have a PlayStation 5. Could you just focus more on like the main thing for us that I don't want to spend the money on that? So that's always gonna be the Achilles heel, especially if they don't like drop the price of this real quick. That kind of like what that report what they put said that it was like apparently like the only way to salvage it is to like slash the price like effective immediately to try to like save it, and that's like hey, it's like Sony was like they decided to continue invest in this. So it's like you win or you lose. The original PSVR
Yep.
sold modestly well, but in this economy where we're just getting PS5s now that you can see, and like I've seen like pictures of PS5s around Best Buys and Walmart's, like finally
Yep.
sitting on shelves. Like that's insane to think that's been 3
My
years.
my brother is so out of touch that he was still talking as if the PS5 wasn't available, and I like pulled it up on his phone. I said, "Yeah, so this one's like 20 minutes away from you. They say they have PS5s in stock. Stop complaining."
I know
So it's
exactly.
like it's just for some reason people don't realize that they're in and they're here and they're available
Yeah,
and
but
just
they're
nobody's wanting
selling a
to go out
lot.
and
That's the
buy.
thing. Like, when we get numbers for this quarter, apparently, PlayStation will have had the greatest January, February, March of their history. That's how much like demand like there was for that console, and then they were able to like supply it. And of course, Hogwarts
Yep.
Legacy came out there. They had the
And
marketing deal.
yeah, the fact that we had a banner January and a decent release in February and a decent release in March so far,
Hmm.
that definitely motivates that.
Oh yeah, and especially like because it's such a genius move for Sony part to like even though it's a multi-platform game, them aligning with Hogwarts like they did, like really tapping into that like pent up Harry Potter. We want a game, whatever it is, and the
Absolutely.
sales they had. So genius on their part. And again, it's like makes me it's kind of bitter that they're getting this much success because we know how we talk about Sony sometimes. Like that's something you feel like they need a kick to the teeth to feel like they need to like treat us better as consumers, but it's still like had that hope for that alleged May June showcase that is said to be happening. But how many times has that also been a constant in our show, Paul? As we reach 100 episodes in like a month. When is Sony gonna say stuff? It's so funny. It's like this week's episode feels like a good like summation of our show so far. As we're so
Yeah.
close to episode 100, I can't wait to see like what breaks for episode 100. Episode 50 was the Square Enix sale of Tomb Raider, Eidos Montreal, and all of that, like for our 50th episode. So that aligned perfectly. So we'll see for episode 100, which is 5 weeks away from now. So till that happens, Paul, where can people find you?
As always, y'all can find me at Dork of Art on Twitter and Dork of Art on YouTube whenever I actually upload things. Where can they find you, Alejandro?
They can find me on Twitter at a_Drosegovia, where I'm retweeting many funny things about like the about like some weird things happening with law over Disney things that we're talking about
Ooh,
today.
that's a whole nother segment.
Yeah, at Alejandro Segovia 93 on Instagram, and my written content currently at seasongaming.com. Future pending for Critical Corner eventually. So, Paul, good to always good that we're finally getting back into the swing of when we can record. Now that you're fully settled where you are, hopefully your internet situation will be fixed in 5 weeks from now. You have found an amazing workaround for game playing, which is so funny. But it's like you got to do what you got to do. But everything will remain
True.
smooth eventually. But to everyone else, like enjoy the rest of your weekend, people. Beware for fake headlines this Saturday because of April Fools. And stay healthy, stay safe, and remember
Press X.
to play.
Good night, everybody.
Hasta la vista, baby.